Someone basically upon my mission, endless silence with stigma and shame about suicide loss, ideation, and mental health. Please, won't you join me? Welcome to Suicide Zen Forgiveness, a podcast that shares powerful stories of suicide loss, ideation, and mental health in order to break the silent stigma and shame. Our mission is to encourage empathy for those experiencing these challenges. Every narrative serves as a beacon of hope on to touch lives and inspire resilience. Won't you join me in this journey as we share stories to help others to find hope? Please note this podcast is for educational purposes and may contain triggering content. If you're grieving or experiencing mental health issues, please reach out to your local suicide hotline or mental health office for immediate help. And now, let's start the show. My first guest of the new series is back in part 2. David Amerland continues the conversation to provide insights on knowledge and human behavior, as well as the impact of connections. David discusses the tools you can use to combat fear and loneliness, from journaling to self-talk and double sighs. These things are the basics we can put into practice to assure that we are okay going forward. Why is this important? We need to make a point of taking things from a cellular level. And then it gets really great. It's easier because we share more things than actually separate us. Be sure and join us. We just started touching on the fact that there is a loneliness epidemic as well as everything else that's going on in the world now. And David, you were about to talk about some tools that we can use in order to deal with that.
Absolutely. Now, if you happen to be on your own, to be alone, to have nobody to actually talk to, what can you do? There are 3 things you can do. Now, the easiest thing you can do is just write things down. The journaling therapy. So essentially, by writing things down, you articulate your internal world, and then you can go back and read it. So then you begin to essentially gain perspective on how you feel. So if you're really unable to open up, if you are not very good at understanding what triggers you, if you're not very good at dealing with situations that happen unexpectedly, journaling is the best tool you can use. It allows you to go back, write down the situation, write down how you felt, be really open and honest with yourself. Only you're going to read those words. And then when you go back and read them, it's quite cathartic because you get a fresh perspective on how you felt, and you realize that the person of the moment who felt those things is different to the person of the moment who reads them, and yet you're the same person. So this begins to lay down the foundation for further internal analysis and growth. If you don't want to journal, or even if you do journal, and I always suggest that as a tool, but you want to use a mental trick, at the moment you realize that you're under stress, you realize you're under pressure, and you need to relieve that, you haven't got half an hour to sit down and do, or even 20 minutes or 15 minutes, however long it will take you to write all these things down, what do you do? I don't know if you've seen the film The Matrix, but there's a scene there with Trinity where she jumps through the skylight, goes down, tumbles down a set of steps. She's on her back, she's hurt, she's being chased by an agent, she waits for the agent to appear, she's got guns at the ready, she's frozen with fear. The agent doesn't materialize, and she's still frozen, and what does she say to herself? Get up, Trinity. Now, in psychology, this essentially is talking to yourself in the third person. It's called distancing. So if you say, come on, David, you can be better than that. Come on, Elaine, this is not who you are. It's like being your coach, having a coach there talking to you in your voice, mentioning your name. And by that distancing effect, essentially inside our head, it's like we're split in two. One person is the person who's feeling these things, and the second is the person who's cheering you on and acknowledges your situation. And what happens is a dampening effect on how we feel about fear and anxiety and uncertainty and all the impossibilities which we face. So that kind of levels us out, and we can assess things with a clearer head. We can say, hey, you can do this. I believe in you. And it sounds silly when we say it in this context, but when you feel it, it actually has a very strong beneficial effect. So this is a tool which you can use immediately when you feel those things. And the trick in these situations is always to acknowledge, to be aware of the internal stress building up in you. And there's one more, because I said three I'm going to give you. There's a connection between the gut and the brain, the gut-brain axis, and it's a vagal nerve. It's how the microbiome communicates with the brain. It's one of the pathways. There's a few more. But essentially, this is susceptible to breathing. So if you take what we call a double sigh, where you go, and just when your lungs are full, you got a little bit more. So you go deep breath, and then a little bit more. And essentially, what this does at a physical level, it stretches your body's particular part as your stomach and your lungs get full of air, and it stretches the nerve connections between the gut and the brain infinitesimally, but long enough for a lag to be created and the anxiety which you're feeling to be relieved. There you go. The physical trick. Anybody who's done any kind of stage work, athletes, martial artists, anybody who goes, in a competition and you feel really stressed before you do it, no matter how good you are, no matter how low level it may be, at that moment in time, you're going to be physically pitted against another person, or you're going to be physically displayed to other people. You're going to do something which is complex. You have trained for it, yes. You have prepared for it, yes. But the possibility of failure in front of everybody is there. You're going to let yourself down. You might lose. You might win. It might be bad. It might be good. The uncertainty builds up in your head. And this is what you do. Take two double sighs, it relieves the pressure, you feel great, and then you're able to focus and get on with things.
Oh, that's really good. I was always told to breathe slow and low.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like a sigh. You go, how we go when we sigh, we go, and then we let it out. Except this time we don't let it out. We take another half a breath in, really stretching our lungs, stretching our diaphragm, forcing our body to stretch. And what happens basically, we elongate all the little nerve connections along the way, just a tiny little bit. And that weakens the signal infinitesimally. And that infinitesimal change results in an immediate relief, which we feel from the internal stress that we're under.
Wow. Oh, that is very cool. This is one of to me, the greatest things about this time, being in this time. We do have a lot more focus on our mental health. We have tools that are available. You just gave us three. There are all these tools that are available to deal with what goes on inside us. And I think
Absolutely.
we have a better chance of being a little more in control of ourselves than anyone ever has on the planet because we know more.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned this, because essentially, and this is my take on this, right? We're more self-aware than ever. And yes, it's difficult. Okay, I'm not saying it's an easy thing
Mhm.
to do, but it's taken us 6,000 years of civilization to get to the point where more or less, and I'm using more or less underlined in bold print because essentially it's still more or less, we guarantee each person's physical health, safety. We have laws about this, we have traditions, we have unwritten societal laws, we have common understanding, all these multiple layers. We have 10 commandments, all these things which basically say that, exactly, we say, okay, you are here and nobody should come and, I don't know, kill you, stab you, rape you, whatever, because they feel like it, or because they like the coat you're wearing, or the shoes on your feet. And things which were acceptable in, I don't know, the year 1000 and the year 2000 are no longer acceptable and I'm talking about BC, we are no longer acceptable now. But it's taken 6,000 years of civilization to get to the point where we say, okay, the sanctity, the physical safety of the individual is so important. We have codified it. We understand it. If challenged on it, we will all agree without exceptions. There's not going to be a single healthy, mentally healthy person on the planet who will say, oh no, it's okay. If you anger me, I'll kill you. No, nobody will agree to that unless they're mentally damaged. We're at the cusp of developing a similar approach to mental health, where again, like we are each individually responsible, not just for our own physical safety, but also the physical safety of others. We try not to endanger people. We try not to let their anger run away with us and kill people, because we can't do that. We try to make sure that it doesn't happen. People may argue, but again, nobody should be killing each other. Okay, so we're all vigilant about this. But when it comes to mental health, when it comes to how we feel, we're just taking the first steps. So we see in social media it's okay to say, okay, I feel really bad, and you're putting it out there. Or you describe a situation where the feelings run out of control, you felt fear, you felt unsafe, you felt uncertain, and you say, God, it really affected me. And people come and say, mental hugs, sending good vibes. This shouldn't have happened. We're beginning to get to the stage where at some point in the foreseeable future, and I don't know how far away that will be, but it'll take a lot less than, let's say, 1,000 years, we are going to see codified things that you can't yell at somebody just because they made you angry. You can't be snark at somebody because, hey, that's actually mentally bullying and it's not the right thing to do, because you are responsible for the mental health of that person. That kind of maturity, that kind of awareness always takes time. And like I said, more or less in the planet, we're pretty safe. Okay, we can go from one end of the planet to the other, and we can pretty much make it alive without anybody killing us. It doesn't mean that we can't end up being dead. It still can happen. That's why there's a more or less. But we have almost guaranteed it, almost, right? So it's this massive achievement if you think about it. Okay, so we are now heading towards that. And it's not going to make us any weaker or any softer. It's going to make us a lot more real, a lot more safe. It will allow us to develop a lot faster psychologically and mentally, because these are the things which are actually holding us back.
I
So
totally agree.
it's all
Yeah, I just want to add
it's all
something.
starting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that's going to make us all stronger,
Yes.
because when you are that aware of your mental health as well as your physical health, then you are less likely to allow things to go far enough to get you so far off balance that you need external help. And it's funny, we're talking about this today. Earlier today on LinkedIn, someone made a post about the fact that it's difficult still to write a post about mental health within business and talk about how we should deal with it, and asking people to share my post, comment on my post. You are still seeing people are very hesitant to step in. So, yes, we've only cracked the door to acknowledging mental health and acknowledging how important it is, not just in our personal lives, but in business. And the person who put up the post first, his name's Chris Coulter, he said that somebody had responded to him and said, "That's really great. I love that you're putting these up." And he responded and said, "I've noticed that you do acknowledge my posts, but why don't you share them? Why don't you comment?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, our company's not really like that." And I thought, oh, and that's exactly what he said. You know how we get our companies to be like that? We start.
Exactly. It comes
It's
down
up
to
to
that.
each of
Exactly.
us.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And
There's
you
still,
said that earlier.
unfortunately, there's still a stigma attached to mental health,
Yeah.
because we believe erroneously that if we have what we call a mental breakdown, we lose part of our identity, circumstances get too much, circumstances change to the point that we feel helpless and lost inside our head, we feel that is a weakness of character.
Yeah.
And we just got to the stage where we have acknowledged that it doesn't matter where you are financially, circumstances can conspire beyond your control, and you can lose everything, and you can end up on the street. And we just realize that. And
Mhm.
it's no reflection on your ability as a business person, or how smart you are, or how wealthy you were.
Mhm.
It's just on these things. A perfect storm of events came together for you, crushed you in a really bad situation. And we have, in most advanced developed societies, safety nets to make sure that you can get the kind of help which you need. If you're lucky enough, you have already your personal network that can step in. You
Yeah.
might have your family network that can help. But if you don't have those things, there are layers which society has put in place to give you a hand so you can step back up onto where you should be. The same thing is mentally. We can all experience a mental breakdown if things get too much. It's
Mhm.
not unlike a sports injury. When do you get injured in sport? When you push a particular muscle group beyond its point of tolerance in a way that you can't safely control it.
Mhm.
Okay, that's when you get injured. You're going to get a tear in your muscles. You're going to get a strain. You're going to get tendons tearing. Those things which we associate with debilitating sports injuries. And we don't think, oh, he's a weak athlete. We say he pushed himself too hard. So,
Yeah.
there's a kind of paradox here where the same thing happens in a different context and we admire it. And then when it happens to us in a mental health environment, which is more complex, more complicated, we don't see it. So it's difficult to actually understand the complexities of it. And instead of being in awe of that thing, we say, oh, what a weak character he must be. And we stigmatize that. And again, that brings us down to the reaction of things which we fear. We tend to deny them, and then we tend to be angry and distance them from ourselves. And we tend to blame on other people because we don't want them to be like us. We say, oh, he's not like me, I'm a strong character. And what we're hoping secretly, what we're just saying by that, is that I hope it doesn't happen to me. We have the unacknowledged fear that maybe it could, and we don't want to be in a particular situation. We
Yeah.
don't want to entertain the possibility. We should be self-analytical sufficiently, to a sufficient degree, to actually be able to see that every time we stigmatize somebody, we say they're not like us. Essentially, they are, and we are afraid of something. We apply it perhaps to different genders. If there's same-sex marriage, for instance, they're different. LGBTQ community, they're different. Muslims, they're different. They're not. If we cut them with a knife, they bleed the same red blood that
Yeah.
everybody else on the planet bleeds. If we analyze people with different skin colors on a DNA level, the difference is so infinitesimal from
Yeah.
DNA alone, you can barely tell the difference apart. You say, oh, is it a black person? Is it a brown person? Is it a yellow person? Is it a white person? We can't tell. We have to
No.
go at the cellular level, and then it gets really gray because we share more things than actually separate us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bring
Uh,
it back to that emotional, yeah.
yeah.
Bring it back
To
to
see.
emotional context. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
It is emotional, and there's currently issues because a trans person, another trans person, has been elected,
Hmm.
and there is this huge debate over what bathroom to use. They cannot use the bathroom. And in my mind, you know me, I can make things super simple at times. I sent an email basically saying, "Excuse me, but in your house, do you have a bathroom for your husband and your son and one for you and your daughter? Are there different bathrooms? Because we're not that rich. We just have bathrooms. We don't care. We don't check your ID before you go into our bathroom." And I know it's simplistic, but in my mind, if it's good enough in your own house, why should it be any different where you work?
Well,
That just doesn't make any sense to me.
yeah, it doesn't. And you're right. And I've been reading about that. Part of politics is performative, and there's a certain amount of theater in that. And they're playing to a certain amount of audience, and they're making those what they think are the right noises for that audience, with that audience in mind. I think the deeper question here is, why should that audience be afraid? And
Yeah.
I think it comes down to the same things we're all feeling. We can take LGBTQ as a threatening force, and then we can take the weather as a threatening force. as a threatening force.
Mm.
And if we think of those two things, obviously the weather is a lot more powerful and can do a lot more
Yeah.
damage. But what do we think we can control most? I can think we control other people, right? So I can say, oh, you can't be gay. You can't have different sexuality than anybody else. You can't have different belief system to anybody else. Why is it easier to direct that? Because then we can't think about, we don't have to think about the things which we can do a lot less about. What if everybody wrote to their congressperson and said, hey, I want you to fix the climate? And we all did that, right? So now they actually have to fix it or lose their seat. Can they fix it? No, they cannot, right? They can't. They can try and things will get a little bit better, but the climate is such a massive machine and it moves so slowly in terms of how it's affected when it goes bad that their efforts within their time frame of governance are going to have an infinitesimal impact. So we're going to vote them out. We'll say, we asked you to do this and you couldn't do it. They'll say, I tried. Goodbye. There's their career tanked. Or they can say, hey, guys, what's really important, our family values are being destroyed. Our faith is being threatened. Our way of life is under attack. Our country is being invaded. Our core belief system is being torn out of us. Ah! We direct that anger towards that. Now they think they're going to be able to do something, okay, about this. And that performative approach to politics right now plays because of these things. But if we forget about them, if we say, hey, what's really making us anxious? Do we not have job security? A lot of people haven't got job security. So we're on
Yeah.
the same boat here. It doesn't matter the color of your skin or the belief or your religious belief or your sexual orientation. Job security is how you make a living and make sure that you survive in this planet. And it's really important. It's under threat everywhere. Do we have perhaps food insecurity or a social housing crisis?
Yeah.
These things are endemic across communities and societies, and they cut across many different levels of social status. These are the things we should be addressing, and they're complex, they're difficult. Politicians, bad politicians, find it easier to direct our attention and anger towards simpler things. They distract us that way, so they don't have to deal with the bigger things.
Okay. That makes a great deal of sense. It saddens me even more because it just, to me, it's just so ridiculous. And I would think, again, because I'm simple in this way, if in this big world, two people find they love each other, I don't care what sort they are, what gender, or what gender are now. I don't think any of that matters. Being with someone else and not being alone is something that you even see the animals want. And there are animals, there are flamingos in Florida. Two flamingo men are raising a flamingo chick, and there are penguins with the same thing. And to me, that's just a sign of goodness and the fact that love is precious, and we should be thankful that someone else has found
Absolutely.
someone else. Because to me, and again, I know I'm just being simple, but things like that we can be grateful for make us happier. So we go out into the world happier people, bringing that happier energy with us and actually making people around us happier. And that just makes
Absolutely. I
so
think
much more sense.
it does. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if we get anybody from around the world, it doesn't matter who they are. I'll go out on a limb here and include the Taliban in this, who are creating, right now, they're performing horrible atrocities against women. It's a really bad regime. But let's
Yeah.
say you get a couple of these guys here, and we get in a circle, we start talking, and once we get through the facade and the performative element of projecting persona, essentially we all want the same things. We want some kind of acknowledgement of who we are, some kind of respect in our own sense of being, a sense of agency, so we have control of our lives, and a sense that we matter. And if anything or anyone gives us that, we're prepared to do almost anything for that. So if we all want the same things, irrespective of how we dress things up, then the question is, how do we achieve them? And I think the bigger question here we should all be asking at some point is, how do we achieve them for everybody? And that's feasible. And that's where the real power of us, and this is where we're all really powerful. You take the most powerful man in the world, or the most powerful person in the world, without people to listen to them, they're nothing. They're zero. Whatever power somebody has is only dependent on the number of people who actually listen to what they say. If you had a podcast, and every day or every time you had a podcast, 10 million people tuned into that, automatically you're a person who matters. Not because suddenly you're better or different, but you have all those people listening to you, and that gives you power. So we give these people power by paying attention to them. We give each other power by paying attention to each other. Whenever we get together and we agree on things, even though there's no total agreement, that makes us powerful. Nobody can take that away from us. That doesn't change. That doesn't depend on anything except us. So we have total control over that. This is the personal agency we all have. This is why there's hope in the world. This is why, no matter how bleak things may seem to be right now, they're essentially heading the right way. Why? They got so bad right now, and it doesn't matter what your definition of bad is. If you experience the world as a bad place, consider that nobody wanted it really to get to that stage. Some people actively tried to stop it. Some people actively tried to make it happen for their own reasons and agendas. Some people were in between, and some people were indifferent. And when we take all this collectiveness, it was not enough to stop it from happening, which means that essentially now it's exactly what should happen. We should experience that bad thing. Never mind how bad it makes us feel. But having experienced it, what does it do? It gives us the impetus to become better. We only change when we're motivated to do something. The neuroscientific or the neurochemical definition of motivation is that things take place in your head and make you make a decision that will move you from a place of discomfort to a place of comfort. You get a better job, you get a better house, you get married, you change countries, you go on a holiday and leave the place you are momentarily to go somewhere better. All these things are motivated by that sense of improving your particular condition, your particular status, or your particular situation. Things will get better from here on because inevitably we are going to face some bad things. We're going to feel pretty bad during those things. But those are the seeds of change. So if you're going to see change happening in the world for the better, whatever better that means for you, this is where it starts.
That at least is hopeful.
We live in a world of miracles. Science and technology have given us more power than ever. We have more information than ever. We have the ability to organize, take decisions, meet other people, share how we feel, share what we're going to do. We have a much easier way, in a much broader sense, or in a much deeper sense than ever before. These are all tools of empowerment. And every time we have those tools of empowerment at our disposal, means that every moment we become cohesive, aligned with other people, they only make us more powerful.
And in all honesty, not that it's been exactly like this, but you mentioned fashion earlier. Everything is cyclical. We go in cycles throughout the world, and that is how we got to where we are now. We had to hit the industrial age. We had to go through the French Revolution. All of these things had to happen for us to be where we are today.
Absolutely. And every time we go through a bad phase of history, and again, definitions of bad can vary from person to person and group to group. But if we agree that it's bad in the way that it makes us feel, Well, that's the motivation to change things. That's the motivation to say, okay, what can I do? How can I use the tools I have to make a little bit of a difference? And this doesn't mean throwing yourself head first into some kind of movement or going at it in a way that's going to make you burn out, because that's counterproductive. It has to be a gradual, reasoned, reasonable pace of progress in terms of the things which we do, the actions we take, the way we behave, which is designed to, for us individually, bring about the world that we expect to see.
Now I'm going to hit you with a big one. So these cycles go on, and is there some kind of timeline, some kind of framework within which you could estimate, are we looking at a decade? Are we looking at 2 decades? What do you see in terms of that sort of cyclical change? Is it something that can happen in a number of years, or is it going to be decades long before we see a, enough of a change that we feel we're coming out the other side? And sorry to hit you with
That's
like
an excellent.
a big question.
No, it's an excellent. It's an excellent question. The rate or the pace of change is determined by the flow of information. Essentially, for things to change, we need to understand what's happening. We need to be informed about what's happening. We need to have some kind of image in our head, even if it's their own kind of image. It really doesn't matter. Information has to flow. And then that information needs to be processed and leads to actions taken over a cumulative basis of millions of people, basically are the change that we see globally and across the planet, across societies and countries and so on. We already know that things are changing as we speak, and individually in pockets, a positive change is happening. And I'll give us an example now. We've been talking about the climate crisis, we're talking about green revolution, we're talking about alternative sources of energy for the last, since the year 2000. So it's almost 2 decades now.
Yeah.
And we have seen very slow change. We're still burning fossil fuels. We still have petrol-powered cars on our roads. We still have power stations that burn coal. So, amongst other things. At the same time, wind turbines, green energy in terms of wave energy, solar panel technology has been improving constantly. Now we're getting close to getting to about 45% conversion ratio. And the average right now is 23 to 25. So we're almost doubling it. These are happening across the globe at such an extent, such a rate, that it now makes financial sense in terms of how it drives segments of society. The moment that happens, that has a momentum of its own. So, I don't know, to give you an idea, if tomorrow every government in the world said, hey, you know what, we have the fossil fuel reserves for the next 150 years secured. So our energy insecurity for the next 150 years is solved. And what happens after that is not our problem. So we're going to go with that. They can decide to say that, but there are so many segments of society actively engaged into production at the industrial level. There's so many jobs dependent on this. There are so many families which are getting money from this for their everyday living. So many people across the globe that this can't be stopped now. It has a momentum of its own. So the green revolution, perhaps, if every government in the world did that, might slow down a little bit, but they can't stop it because it doesn't make financial sense. The moment something doesn't make financial sense, it means it's embedded in a society as a change that has real sustainability, and then it's hard to stop. It's like the Industrial Revolution. They tried to take it back. They attacked the spinning jenny. They had riots in the streets. It made financial sense, right? People made a better living working under incredibly bad conditions in factories than they did work in the fields. It couldn't be stopped. And the same thing is happening now with the green revolution. So we see that in just one element of change. And there are other elements of change happening all around us in terms of communication technology, in terms of how we're going to be building our houses, how we're going to be building our vehicles, how we're going to be running the grid. All these things are changing gradually to such a degree that within the next 10 years, we're going to find ourselves in a different kind of society. So a 10-year timeline, within a lifetime, we're going to see tremendous changes. And within that, we'll have to reimagine work, because the 9 to 5 presentism that we've had since, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution is just stupid. It doesn't work
Yeah.
anymore.
No.
It made sense back then because you had factories and you needed warm bodies to run those factories. You needed an overseer to make sure that somebody turned up and was productive so they could produce those things. And it doesn't make sense to do it that way. Having a person do a job that a machine can do, have somebody wait for you to serve you coffee, that's a terrible waste of a human being. Having somebody to make your meal when he's not a magnificent, I don't know, Michelin star chef who's creative all the time, but they just use copy-paste recipe to produce a meal. Why do you have a human being doing that when you can have a machine doing it? So if you have machines doing those things and you put human beings out of a job, you have to deal with that, right? Because every change has ramifications. So we have to reimagine the social contract. So all these things, which sound amazing, right, and really disruptive, they're happening as we speak, and they're happening gradually. And what happens? What do we say about change? It happens gradually, and then it happens suddenly once it reaches a certain point. And that's what we're going to be seeing. These are the challenges we have in front of us over the next 10 years. We need to change our system of government. Our political systems clearly are not fit for purpose. We need to change the way we run our global finances. Again, these are things which grew from the 19th century unchecked. We patched them up on the 20th. We're in the 21st century, and they no longer serve us the way it's supposed to. So we need to change them. And because nobody's in charge, this is not a SimCity simulation. You don't have overriding intelligence saying, I'm going to build a cathedral there and a nice road here. I'm going to make the people collect wood on that side. And now we need a university because we need to research, I don't know, iron ore. Because we need an army that has metal weapons. This is not the way it works, right? All these things happen organically. Because they happen organically, they're messy, they are painful because change is painful. So we need to feel more pain than the change is going to cause in order for us to change. So that's where we're at. The world feels messy. It feels wonderful at the same time. We're living through historical times.
Oh, that's absolutely true because there are new discoveries all the time. And we have to admit, you and I are tech nerds who love the fact that there is all this change and all these new avenues and apps and all the things that you can do, I think make our world a lot easier. But you have to get yourself past the fear of change, the fear of the unknown. And that's I think that's where we're going to wrap up for today. But I think, do you have a suggestion or maybe a tool or two for people to maybe dip their toe in and embrace change, embrace these new tools that we are being given that can really make your life easier?
Actually, I have.
Yay!
It's not what you expect. Guaranteed. All right. So it's easy for us to say embrace change. And those people, the people who say that usually are already comfortable with discomfort. And then they want to impose this on everybody else. And this is unrealistic. So change is going to happen whether we embrace it or not. We are going to see a lot of fragmentation where we should see unity in our society, and then we're going to see the opposite as well. All of these things will become easier, better. They will make us feel better if we, in all those situations, find it within ourselves to be kind to others and to ourselves. And if we can do that, if we can start by being kind to ourselves, by not constantly tearing ourselves down, filling ourselves with anger, externalizing that anger, feeling hate, externalizing that hate. If we manage to do it, if we manage to be kind to us first and then kind to others, that can change pretty much the way that we deal with and face all the unexpected things coming our way. And I will leave you with that.
David, that's absolutely beautiful. I cannot thank you enough for coming and early in our series to be able to talk about negotiating the uncertainty that is coming. And let's be honest, it's already here. It's not
It
a
is
matter
indeed.
of it's coming, it's here. I believe there's a lot more to say about this. I believe there's a lot more that we can all talk about. And down the road, I think I'm going to invite you back to do a panel that maybe we'll get a few other people and we can all discuss what our thoughts are on where else we can take things, and perhaps come back to some of the tools you've offered today. And the fact is, as much as be kind is a little different from what I thought you might say, I think it's a brilliant place to start.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me here.
absolutely. We will have all the information for you to be able to get a hold of David yourself, and all the links to his books, starting with Intentional, which I think everyone should read. I also think everybody should read The Sniper Mind, and that's just me. I yes, I'm virtually hugging you over there in Greece, because I so appreciate your wisdom and the fact that you are always open to come on and offer it to everybody in our audience. It is so wonderful to see you. I thank the audience for coming along with us. People that have questions, you can ask myself, you can ask David, and it'll all be below the podcast. So you will be able to get in touch should you need. In the meantime, make the very best of your today, every day. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here for another inspiring episode of Suicide Zen Forgiveness. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe and download on your favorite service, and check out SZF's YouTube channel or Facebook community. If you have the chance to leave a 5-star rating or review, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from the hope and inspiration from our guests. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by the following sponsors: Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you rocking page 1 in the search results. Canada's keynote humorist Judy Croon, motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City, Judy has been involved for over a decade in the City Street Outreach Program in Toronto.
The ultimate podcasting path. This is great for you if you're just starting your podcast or if you've been running it for a while. It's filled with tools, templates, and training for starting, growing, and monetizing your podcast. Get access to time-saving systems and strategies for accelerating your process at each step. Find new connections and collaborations in the uplifting podcasting community. I look forward to seeing you there.
Do you have a story to share? Do you know someone you think would be a great guest? Please go to szf42.com. And for our American listeners, that's szf42.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again.
And basically no time.